welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I'll be your host for December. Jingle, 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 jingle. Because it's the end of the year, and at the end of the year, whether you've been on the naughty list or the nice list, you always get a nice little treat. So, this is only because we've had to reschedule so many times that it's now this close to Christmas. But join him.
I'm going to go look it up. When was our first... when did we first plan this? I don't even
want to even talk about it because, you know, if we were a pizza or try to make a pizza, I'd be bringing the base and the cheese, and Patrick Leader, he'd be bringing the hot tomato sauce, and it might be asymmetrical, the ingredients that we're bringing, but in the end you'd have a fantastic pizza. I don't know if he looks like the type of guy who's going to bring some pineapple. You look like you're going to bring some pineapple. He's not.
I love pineapple on pizza.
Yeah, so join him.
To our credit, it's been under a month.
Well, that's not bad then.
No, it's not.
I've done worse. I've done better.
So may I add some color commentary at this point? We're not wizards is one of my favorite expressions. Or I'm not a wizard. I say it to my daughter.
Oh, right, okay.
When she's like, why isn't X done? And I'm like, because I'm not a wizard. Like I haven't done it in the 3 seconds we were talking about it.
So this is almost like fate. You can actually tell your daughter that you've now been on the podcast, which is specifically.
And I'm still not a wizard.
Still not a wizard. This is amazing.
I when it popped up on my calendar, I was like, what the heck are we doing today? And at 2:04? So,
yeah, just putting random times just to mess with people's heads. I guess we better say hello to everybody who's out there, because if you're joining us for the first time, thanks for joining us. The reason that we do this is because we're on an ongoing mission, just like the Starship Enterprise, to interview and speak to as many people who are involved in the tabletop hobby as possible. And the second reason is that I have been playing Root quite a little bit since it kind of landed on my doorstep. So when you play a Root and you get the opportunity to speak to, you know, one of the principal people behind it, you have to take that opportunity to speak to them. So we're very excited to have Patrick on the show. What we like to do is we like to find out a little bit about your past, going as far back as you want to, or as not, as the case may be. But do you want to tell us kind of a little bit about how you got into the hobby? I'm moving my microphone because We're on camera, and it's quite rude if you can't see me.
It's all good. So I had an older brother who played Dungeons and Dragons back in the 80s. And he and I were a bit like 5 years apart, 4 years apart, and so I didn't play with him because now we could, but back then we couldn't. And I would steal his books at night and read them, or during the day when he wasn't there and read them, or whatever. And eventually he got out of it, and I took his set over and started playing myself. We moved to Minnesota. There's a lot more kids my age in my neighborhood able to play D&D, so I played D&D with them. And got into it that way. That's not the board game part, but that's it. I had a friend who lived on the other side of town, and he owned like Titan and Cosmic Encounter. Oh no, I owned Cosmic Encounter. He had Titan and a couple other board games, and kind of got into like board games beyond, kind of the run of the mill stuff. He had Survive also, which got a lovely reprint in the last 10 years. And so, I just kind of started trucking along from there. One day while shopping for role-playing stuff at a store, we'd have to drive 90 minutes to get to a game store because I lived in rural Minnesota. One day while shopping at a store, I picked up Cosmic Encounter on a whim and brought it home. And that was really my first like hobby board game that I really got into. And it was pretty... I played some Diplomacy too. I really got into Cosmic. Probably played it, I don't know, 300, 400 times my junior and senior year of high school. So, between the two.
Is it, everybody talks about it as kind of like the darling of the board games. I know John Gilmore talks about it all the time, how it's one of the favourite games he's ever played. And it's because he says, the base game, like everything, it's still good. But it's when you get all the different factions and all the different kind of additions and stuff like that. Did you kind of... Was it one of these things you kind of like had pocket money or something, so you would, or paper round money or something, you'd go out and buy yourself an expansion to kind of Cosmic Encounter? Did you end up with every single thing that was available?
So it was the Mayfair edition, and it only had, for a long time, it only had one thing, which was just called More Cosmic Encounter. And then a year or two later, it was, because back then, like, a year passing felt like much longer. So we played the heck out of it, and then by the time the expansion came out, we were almost like, eh. Whereas now I'm like, all right, cool, I'll buy it now. So I think there was an even More Cosmic Encounter for Mayfair or something like that, but I can't really remember. And then they did sell, Mayfair did sell blank, like components, like so you could get cards for the deck and stuff like that. And so we bought those and were made up a whole bunch of our own powers. That was mostly my friend who got me into game design. We worked on it together, or he worked on it, and I just helped him a little bit. So fast forward a couple of years post college, like 97, 98. I was a friend of mine went to Austria and brought home a copy of Settlers in German, and taught us how to play it. And I actually was pretty adept at reading German for about a year. Yeah, because we had to pick it up back then. and
it's like one of those things. You had an accident, you banged your head, and you went, "I can read German now."
Yeah. Don't ask me to do it now. But I got through the book, the Settlers of Catan book, with heavily depending on a dictionary, of course. And plowed through it and played that. And then the same friend, not the Austrian friend, but the same friend that I played Cosmic Encounter with back then, like in 2000, he was visiting me on vacation. I lived in Denver then, and he lived in Minneapolis, where I live now. And he flew over and visited me, and like he was like, "I'm gonna make a game this week," and I was like, "All right, cool." And so we made a game, and I was like, "Oh wow, that really wasn't as bad as I thought." So I've actually been designing off and on since 2001.
Wow. What did you do at college?
I studied psychology, and I got a job as a programmer because I had a minor in computer science out of college. So I was programming that whole time. So
cool.
Yeah.
How'd you get? Well, the first kind of couple of games that you put together that you designed, were they kind of traditional, this is your powers, this is what you do? I mean, was messing around with Cosmic Encounter, was having the different powers, the different factions, is that kind of in your DNA of game design when you were first looking at games? Was it something that helped kind of form to say, well, why should everybody that's sitting around the table be exactly the same? Because usually, if I play a game if you play like a dungeon crawl, you've you've always got to move and attack. Do you know what I mean? You move forward 4 spaces, or you move forward 6 spaces, or you've got a magical ranged attack, or you've got a ranged attack, or you've got a melee attack.
Or you sing or something.
Yeah. But did Cosmic Encounter help you kind of see, well, actually, is it something that's kind of, you could look back and say, well, that's why Vast is the way it is. That is why kind of
No, unfortunately. Nothing that cool. Most of the early games I designed, I was fascinated by variable player power and having a different mechanism for each system in the game. And the way that you interact, or the rate that you interact with those mechanisms, is what causes asymmetry between the players. One of my earliest games I designed was an economic game where everybody starts out in a different segment of like the economy. So like one player's industry, one player's retail, one player's logistics, and so you have to work together. Like, so instead of like, because I was playing a lot of Puerto Rico when I designed it, and I was like, instead of having everyone start out kind of the same footing, you actually start on a very different footing, and then you as a player decide if you want to grow towards the other players to compete with them, or to continue specializing your field to have an absolute control over that field. And so that's kind of where some of that comes from. But really where it came from is when I met David Somerville in 2014, who was the original designer of Vast when it was a game called Trove. And he just opened my eyes to, like, I was like, oh, wow. And I, of course, I already played Netrunner, so I was aware of, because I played Netrunner back in like 2001 or 2002. the original Netrunner, and so I was aware of the concept, but I thought it was only going to be able to work 2-player like Netrunner does, and then I saw him doing it with 4 factions, and I was like, oh boy, this is awesome. He didn't want to publish the game with me at first, and so I started designing my own asymmetric game with his help. He came and taught me his techniques.
Was he wanting to keep Trove as his own kind of baby that he was going to kind of self-publish and kind of release to the masses? Is that what he was wanting to do?
Well, at that point, I'd only had a $3,500 Kickstarter.
All right.
And I offered to publish it, and he's like, "Well, I think I'm going to go talk to some larger publishers first." And so he did that, and then I helped him. I helped his pitches. I helped him write pitches. I helped him communicate with them, and I even told him a couple of publishers to talk to. And it just took them too long to respond, and he wanted to get it taken care of. So he came back to me and eventually said, "Of the small publishers that have contacted me, you've been the nicest, and so I'm going to work with you."
Did you say to him, "No, that's not good enough. I want, I want a little bit of begging here." No,
nothing like that happened. I tell you though, the moment I found out what was going to happen, it was like 11 at night, and I went to bed early for some reason, and I came downstairs and I picked up my phone. I was like, oh, there's a message on my phone. So I was reading it. I came downstairs for water or something. And my heart started beating so hard. I thought, this is it. I'm going to have a heart attack. They're going to find me dead reading my phone tomorrow morning. I had to stable myself and sit down because I was so excited. Because I knew it was going to be life-changing. And sure enough, it was life-changing. So, and, he worked on it for a little while, but I mostly took over after a while. There were some health issues in his family. Right. And then, we had some rough spots.
Yeah, no.
But we're better now. No. I'm the first backer of his last 2 Kickstarters, so I think that, I hope that proves to people that I really like him.
But then, I think I've spoken to people before who have been published. And I know it's sometimes difficult for you to say, to let go of your baby, because somebody puts a piece of cardboard on the table, but what they don't see is the 150 hours I've been working on this thing. You're giving me feedback, and I've tried this 72 times and it doesn't work, but then you want to go ahead and change it. And I think it's sometimes difficult, if it's your creation, to trust somebody who might necessarily have a slightly different vision to go ahead and deliver kind of what you wanted. I mean, is what ended up on the table with Vast, is that vastly different, but then shoot me now. But is that different from the original kind of concept that kind of David brought to you, or have you managed to maintain the kind of the heart and soul behind it?
I think we maintained a lot of it. His goblins were considerably different. The goblins went through probably 7, 8, maybe even 9 big version changes before we hit upon the goblins that are there now. And honestly, it was always about just making them simpler to understand. And his goblins in the very first draft, I think, were probably the most playable. And then what he gave me, there were some issues with it. And I think it may have just been a version control issue. He didn't hand me the right rules that matched the components, and I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't know how to fix it. So I fixed it my own way. But then every time we brought it to a show and showed people the goblins, we'd just be like, oh my God, no one's getting how to play this, and we have to keep making it simpler and simpler until we get down to that. I've always wondered though if we could have gone to his original model and maybe gotten it to work. But here we are. But no, I think it's pretty faithful. His game was considerably swingier, and to him that was fine. He was a new designer, and he thought that and he'll fess up to this if you ask him like this. He was like, yeah, that's what I wanted. But if the knight went from first to last in one turn, that wasn't a big deal to him. And to me, that kind of I was like, I'm already having to sell people on the asymmetry. I can't also sell. It's also a swingy game, as a new concept. So I had to back up on that one. I think the mechanics as they are now allow for a lot more of forethought and planning than what he turned over to me. So he likes it a lot. He's played it and told me that he likes being brought forward into kind of the modern design era. So it was good.
When Vast came out, there was a lot of people were calling it genre defining. People were saying it like it took expected kind of mechanics and completely turned it on its head. I mean, were you surprised at the kind of the feedback that you kind of got, or were you just kind of like, well, yeah, I know it's cool.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I am. Yeah. I think I actually did feel like we were kind of onto something when he brought it to me and when we were working on it. I thought this was going to be kind of different. I think in game design you're kind of looking, especially game design versus game publishing, which is a much more business oriented task. I feel like you're looking. So you're either going to get. There's two things that are going to happen. You either get the game that incrementally improves on the concepts of the previous game, like that was designed, and you see that with like UA with like worker placement. Like he keeps making worker placement games, and they're beautiful and well designed and well thought out. But then you also you look for like the kind of the genre shifting moments, like when Dominion came out. Yeah. And I don't know if there had been a deck builder before Dominion, but it really defined and brought Dominion building. It really brought deck building into the forefront, and Ticket to Ride. Clearly, there had been rummy style games of collecting sets and playing cards for points, but I think Ticket to Ride really put it on the map and combined to the shortest path versus and brought those two concepts together: the pathfinding with the rummy style gameplay. Into a very simple package that was easy to teach. And I'm not going to say Vast was easy to teach, but I had a feeling that we were onto something new that way when we were doing it. Now, like Jamie Stegmeyer in his podcast was like, well, it's a great idea. And I wanted to play it to see if this is where I was going next as a publisher. Yeah. I don't think it's a good idea because basically your rules overhead on teaching the game is going up by a factor of 3 or 4, depending on how many people are playing. So, which is kind of the antithesis of his model of how to market a game. So,
yeah, I mean, what's the playtesting like? I mean, is it a big? I mean, okay, from my experience in playing Root, I've played Root 6-7 times now, if not more.
That's 2 more than I have.
And the asymmetry is something that I've played with every faction except the. I played the Woodland Alliance is my favourite.
Right.
And I've not played with the Vagabond. But I've noticed already that even in those games that we've played, the way the game kind of can play out and does play out is ended up being kind of completely different. I mean, how do you even begin to start playtesting something like that? I mean, do you playtest with a small group but continuously, or do you try and push it out to as many people as possible? Because I'll be honest with you, we probably got into game maybe 3.5, and there was still a couple of rules that were kind of clicking with us.
Right.
I think the main one that I ended up looking for was, do you lose your victory points if you put something back after it's destroyed, kind of thing? And it's like, no, kind of thing. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And that was a kind of a but no. As I say, my question was, in terms of the playtesting, did you keep it focused within a group that was repeatedly playing it, or did you try and spread it as wide as possible?
So there was 2 sorts of things going on for Vast, and one of the things that attracted me to the game, in addition to how wonderful it was David really did a good job of building an online community that supported the testing and the development. Like, a lot of people were reading the rules and talking about the rules when I got there, and I kind of kept that tradition alive. And that's frankly why, as a company, I try. Like, I've published the Crows and the Moles, which are the 2 new factions for Root, to the internet. You could download it and start playing it right now if you wanted to. And so you did all that discussion out in front, and there was a lot of people testing before I got on board, and as I developed new versions, there was people testing with us, and that was good because I always had a good sense of what was challenging to people. I didn't learn a lot from the playtest in terms of this, the dragon needs to do X, but I did still learn this is a problem, or if there's a hotspot, we could see those problems. But yeah, I formed 2 groups. I cannibalized my Wednesday board game group to play test. and I used my Saturday group, which is normally plays role-playing games. I would use them when I was getting towards a milestone. I'd switch them over to playing Vast with me. And believe it or not, our group actually could play 2 games in an evening because we got so good at it. And so yeah, a lot of playtests. My hunch is I played 300, 400 games before I got to publication. When I first started playtesting, I played it 5 times in 48 hours.
Wow.
To kind of get a sense of the flow of the game before I started rewriting the rules. So a lot of that. And then at the time I was working as a software developer, and I kind of got in the habit of like making really rapid changes and then freezing it and testing that and then making really rapid changes and freezing it. So I probably didn't follow a traditional style of slowly chiseling on the rules like some people do.
Yeah.
And which was risky. I mean, we could have definitely not found a problem with the game when people were now that people are playing it, but it's been okay.
Yeah.
And the same with Root. We in the studio now I have a studio, so we had the same 3 or 4 people play testing, and we would we kind of nominated people to be a certain role for the playtesting process. So about half your games we were expecting to play. I was the vagabond. So about half the games that we played in studio, I played as a vagabond. So. And that gave me perspective as it changed. I could talk about like what my concerns were about the other roles as they changed. Yeah. And as my role changed, I could talk about that too.
Okay. So. Okay. Because the thing about Vast is that it's completely, as we said earlier, it's not a case that you are just doing 1 or 2 movements. I mean, in Vast, you go, okay, I'm the knight. Okay, I'm going around, I need to collect treasure. And then it's a case, but you're also, somebody can be a dragon. And what does a dragon want to do? It's like, well, the dragon kind of wants to wake up and get out. And then it's like, but you can also be the cave. And it's like, well, what's the cave going to do? Well, the cave wants to kill everybody by collapsing. And then it's like, well, what's the thief? Well, the thief wants to go around nicking stuff. And then there's the goblins. What do the goblins want to do? They just want to be, difficult. They just want to be absolutely difficult. I mean, for anybody that's looked at, Vast, is there any factions you always recommend people would start with? I mean, I know you've put them kind of in the rules. I mean, what would you recommend as somebody that's play tested it for so far if somebody's kind of like starting out in it?
Oh, I definitely recommend the Knight and the Dragon. They're kind of the most straightforward and like kind of having an action economy that moves you around or and then you have the most straightforward like I just have to get strong and kill the dragon. I just have to get strong and get out alive. I think they're probably the easiest to pick up as far as that goes. I like the goblins. My home group started calling me the Goblin Whisperer and prevented. They said I couldn't play them anymore during testing. So, but I do acknowledge that there's some complexity to setting up their attacks well. So, if I'm playing the goblins with you in a pickup game at a convention or something, and I don't play on hard or expert, you should probably throw me out of the convention. So, because that's just mean of me. That's just cruel. And I have even on expert, I've beaten groups at conventions.
Have you not thought about walking about with a disguise on so you could sneak into games and say, "Oh, what's this game about?" Vast? I've never heard of it before.
Should we make it interesting? Perhaps we could play for some money.
Exactly. I've got a Benjamin Franklin here that says you can't beat me. Oh,
yeah.
Oh, what?
I did sit down at PAX U for a game of Root, and then I was like, "Oh, I'll play the Vagabond." So against new people, but I didn't take their money. So, well, I did.
I'm sure you probably did because, like everybody else, there's sometimes bills to pay, and sometimes there's a bit of grey area in terms of the honesty, which you can kind of
nice.
But then, I mean, okay. See, since Root has, I know that you've got a different version of Vasta, which is the kind of the mysterious Manor. And that was actually the middle of the year that you kind of funded that, and that's going through. Where are you in terms of kind of like fulfillment and printing and things like that with that at the moment? Is that out there? Or can people pick that up anywhere?
So we are sending the files to the factory on December 18th.
Wow.
So you're interrupting my time finishing it. And I think even Nick laughed at that. But it's Nick and Cole's project right now. They are wrapping it up. So that's where we're at, and then we're going to start printing. Unfortunately, it looks like, and I haven't told the public yet, it looks like we're going to have a small delay because of our factory said they could get it done, and now we're looking at Chinese New Year's going to stop us up for a few weeks.
Yeah.
And we'll pick up production when Chinese New Year's over, which is fine. It actually gives us a little bit more time because we don't have to submit the rules until they have the shortest timeline for printing.
Yeah.
So we can be working on, we can continue editing and things like that even while the cardboard components are being printed. So we'll use that time.
Yeah.
As best as we can. So
is there a massive difference between the gameplay between the Manor and the original Vast, the Crystal Cavern?
It is. I was very careful to design every role to play differently in the sense that how they earn the strength or the movement or whatever they're trying to get. I mean, the Paladin is still looking for grit, so they're compatible. Yeah. He still ends up with strength, so he's compatible, but the way he moves is different, and the way he earns his abilities used during the game is very different from the knight. And they're probably the closest. And then the skeletons don't build up strength at all. They're just individuals running around the board, and they have to distract the Paladin to hit the Paladin. So they have to stack up, surround the Paladin, and then they become stronger for each skeleton that's surrounding the Paladin.
Right.
So later skeletons in the turn can hit. The main feature that I would say that is that I feel like it's a better entry point for the series, unfortunately. That's just how it worked out. But we focused on making less abilities and making a better flow into the game so that players can learn it. Some of the roles honestly have I would say by word count half the rules of their Crystal Caverns counterpart. So the rules are quite a bit shorter in that sense, which is great because it gave us a lot more room then to here's an illustrated way to play, or here's a walkthrough of how to play the game. Yeah. And so it gives us a lot more space to teach the players how to play the game. And we've learned a ton about usability since those days, and we have someone that works just on usability. Josh Yearsey, our editor, works just on usability. And so we've learned a lot about that and how people learn how to play the game. We've watched people learning how to play it, and so we've learned a lot from there. So that's the primary difference. Is I think it's going to be an easier point to jump into. So
yeah.
But every role does play differently. The Manor is not trying to collapse the Manor. The Manor has to trace routes through its own body with its Wraith piece.
Oh, right.
And as it does that, it earns points, and when it gets to 18 points, the Manor seals, and then the Manor wins the game. So, and the Enchanter is very different from the Thief, victory-wise. So,
is the Vast kind of franchise going to continue? I mean, are we going to see the Vast at sea? Or would it be called a Vast?
A Vast.
There you go, there's your title.
My first graphic designer was my brother-in-law, and he did make a cover called it has a Vast written on it, and he put an eye patch on all the characters, all the goblins, all the dragon,
really?
The knight has an eye patch, and then he put an eye patch on one of the crystals in the foreground. So, which that cracks me up. So I have designed a game called Vast the Frozen Fear, which is a third title.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's a couple things working against it. I think we'll have to see how sales of Mysterious Manor go. The Kickstarter didn't go as well as Crystal Caverns. So, I mean, if you compare the first campaign of each, it went swimmingly. And I'm not saying it was a bad campaign. It was just it just didn't go as well as the second Crystal Caverns campaign. Mm-hmm. And I think there was some resistance to getting a second Vast title. People thought, well, it's going to be the same game. It's just reskinned. It's just a reskinned game.
Yeah.
And so I think once they see reviews, they're going to realize maybe that's wrong. I think some people said it was too hard to learn, and so now we're giving people an opportunity to jump back into the second. Maybe some people they're going to see a review that says no, it's actually quite a bit easier to learn, and they'll jump in at that point. So if sales pick up, then we're definitely interested in doing a third title. I took possession of Vast in December of 2014.
Yeah.
And frankly, I'm just exhausted. I've just been working on it so much. So if I do work on it again, I need a solid break before I can get back to working on another Vast title. I turned it over this summer to Cole and Nick for development, and I had to do a lot of business development stuff in the last 3 or 4 months, and now I'm back to designing again. I'm so happy to just be like cutting a fresh trail into new designs. But if we do see it, what's going to happen too then is I think we're going to have to write, and I'm excited to do this work or hire someone to do this work, as the case may be.
Yeah.
I think Vast the Crystal Caverns needs to be simplified in the way that Mysterious Manor is.
Yeah.
And then they all need to be brought into the same language. They're compatible, but I think we could have done more with making. I think a second edition of Vast Crystal Caverns will make it very easy to design the Frozen Fear.
Yeah.
And when all 3 of those are on the same plane, and then we kind of release revised rules, and then here's the Frozen Fear set is how we approach it. So I think like summer 2020 even would be the soonest anyone's going to see that though.
Yeah. Because you've got, obviously we're going to mention Root. We have to mention Root. I've already mentioned Root. I mention Root on most podcasts at the moment, Patrick. I just
people
like
know.
to say,
people know it's out there.
It's like every time it's like there's a little bell that goes off. There's like it's a drinking game out there where it's like Richard mentions Root on the We're Not Wizards podcast because I do, it's one of my favourites. Was it? People are talking about it being like almost like a little bit of a war. It's like a little bit of a war game in terms of how the power and how the powers work. Some people are saying, some people are still really, really excited by it, and they're playing, kind of continuing to kind of play it. I myself, I'll be playing it tomorrow probably because I'll take it along the bag and it'll be the thing because everybody's played it, everybody knows how to get it. When kind of like when you were developing Root and putting it together. Did you have an inkling of like this is actually pretty special? This is definitely going to work. This is going to be turning some heads here.
Yeah, I guess so. We were a little bit in a crunch to get it to Kickstarter on time, and at some point, part of like, I still like have a lot of zeal to play it. In fact, we've played it twice today. So, like, when it was closer to completion, and I was seeing the reviews, and I was seeing the external playtesters, and some of our external playtesters went crazy for it. And then I was like, we might be onto something here. I think that this is pretty special. And like I said, with the fatigue I've had on Vast, I still love the Vast series, but the fatigue I have on Vast, now, like, I started designing the Root expansion when I did return back to creative work because I was just like, I'm in a new space. I'm gonna like working here. I don't know how much clue we had until it started working its way through the end of the development track. Obviously, people were really empowered by the Kickstarter, and it was funny. Like, we did get a lot of comments that were like, "Well, I already have Vast, so I'm not going to buy Root." It was too hard to learn, and now I think a few of them have eaten crow and come back and got Root since then. So
I know it's been
it's
been like hen's teeth to get hold of. It was really, really difficult for people to actually pick it up, and there was people saying, "When can we get it at retail?" I've seen it here. Have you seen it? Or I've seen it kind of online. So there has been a great big kind of push to it. The art killed me. I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, from somebody who was, grew up with I got like the Richard Scarry kind of feel about it, that kind of illustration. It was very kind of a beautiful, very simple, lovely kind of... There's too much dark going on in board games nowadays. If I had to look at another game where it's like different shades of grey, different shades of dark green, different shades of brown. I mean, there's a Kickstarter it's on at the moment who's doing exceptionally well. But it's like, it wouldn't kill you to put some oranges, some bright greens, a little bit of Dago pink in there. I mean, it wouldn't kill you to kind of brighten the place up a bit. But that was the thing when I looked at Root, when I looked at the box and the artwork and the characters, I was like, I love this already. I want to play this. I just want to have this on the shelf just so I can say, look at the artwork. Because it was kind of like kind of like really, really bright. Was that something when you were first when that was kind of like first being designed? Was the artwork, was that already fully formed, or was that something that you considered and said, well, let's turn the cartooniness up on this? Because Vast is quite cartoony, but was it kind of keeping in line with the kind of the brand there?
So we had a couple things went into that. I talk a lot in a criticism, and I review games for myself in my own notes frequently. And I talk a lot in criticism and in art direction that I see what you're talking about frequently. That you want to make a dark or morbid tone, and so you only you depend on a smaller color palette than most people would normally depend on to do an artistic work. And don't do that. The one that drives me crazy, and I see this a lot on amateur design Kickstarter games. And I love you all. You've done a great job, and you've really built up a community. But if you're making the only people that should have ever made a card look like a page in a book was Magic the Gathering.
Yeah.
They did it great.
Yeah.
And you will not hit that so iconically and pitch perfectly. You should try something else. And it's because basically if you're printing black text on a muddy brown page, and on the screen it looks bright, you get to the printer and it's going to look darker than you think it's going to look.
Yeah.
So you have to be really careful about that. So yeah, I've always had this strong sense that we want to develop a colorful, rich, colorful world. Kyle, of course, has contributed a lot to that. He does a lot of the art direction himself.
Yeah.
And he's always been like, you want to use a lot of colors. It's funny because we are talking about doing a horror game now, and we've had a lot of discussions about this issue of how not to trap it in sort of a gray or brown or red world, but to make it feel like the characters are alive in that setting without, to express the tone of fear in another way.
I think a lovely, beautiful, bright, sunny-looking kind of horror game would be absolutely more unsettling than being in a kind of a horrific kind of rundown kind of house. I can't imagine anything worthwhile than say a horrific game in a sunny meadow, or near a lovely bridge, or here we're taking a walk halfway up a hill. Let's have a picnic. I mean, that's normally, I think that's what they talk about. Some of the best horror defining kind of moments are when you take an ordinary situation and you make it kind of horrific, kind of from there. Which would be
I
kind
agree,
of interesting.
or unsettling or unfamiliar. Yeah. And then it goes on from there. It's going to be a long story, but so back when I met David, the game I was working on was this game called Giant, and it was my own asymmetric game, and that slowly turned into just kind of an open world adventure game without a lot of asymmetry except variable player power between the characters. And we were building that to be a traditional fantasy world, kind of like Titan, where one player is a minotaur, one player is a giant, one player is some thieves or something like that. But then Kyle said, I'm tired of doing traditional fantasy stuff, and if we're going to continue the Vast series, I want some other room to play. So then we started making the factions anthropomorphic animals. And that led to, so he did some concept sketches for that, and when Cole and I were discussing projects we could get done in the time we had, we said, let's take this idea of mine and combine it with this art style, and that's where Root comes from. And that other game, Path, is still, it's on my calendar, so I'm excited to get back to it.
That's cool. That's cool. With it being some distinct factions, has that kind of left you open? I mean, you've already done a couple of expansions for Root, so has this left you open to put in more expansions for Root, or are you going to be quite content just to say, I need to draw a line under this and stop, and just leave it as a kind of a game? Is there a bit of a fear, which you mentioned with Vast, that if you keep on working on Root just now, you'll eventually go, do you know what? If I see another rabbit, I'm going to hurt somebody.
I'm gonna hurt somebody. I think we already have notes for 6 or 7 factions that we could do. I would like to do kind of a semi-annual or annual expansion with 2 or 3 factions in it each time. So I don't know if that's going to happen because I can pass it off to Cole.
Yeah.
We could even pass it to Nick, who is our graphic designer, who's done we taught him how to game develop, and so like he could come in and be a game developer with our with Cole being kind of the czar of the series, is still controlling the series itself, just to make sure things are compatible with that. And then we also, in fact, a guy from Brooklyn Game Labs flew in to visit us. He's just walked into the studio. Him and like 24 other amazing people on BGG have designed their own player factions. I don't know if you've looked at the variants page for Root. Yeah. He designed a giant snake that is consuming the other player pieces and digesting them. And there's a ton, and I'm amazed by the creativity of it. So even if we like somehow run out of ideas, we could always go back and start looking at the better ones. I've played some of them because I like the game Root, so I've just I'll print a couple of those out on the weekend and play some of those, and I've really been enjoying other people's concepts for it.
Is there going to be a hedgehog?
So Marshall, my new employee, has been working on a hedgehog race, which I'd like to see in play. It's kind of about, you have to create these hedgerows to limit movement on the map.
Yeah.
And then there is a variant faction that somebody designed called the Hedgehog Constellatory. How do we pronounce that word? I'm not very good at words. And he's been working on it quite a bit, because a lot of them have been kind of fire and forget. Like, people just publish their notes, and then they're like, game development's actually tricky. And that guy has been reposting frequently his notes. So they have kind of they get points for kind of policing the map and keeping people from fighting, which is kind of a fun concept. So,
have you thought about kind of changing the map then, introducing actually? Because I mean, factions are one thing, but actually introducing kind of different environmental. Because I mean, you've done. I mean, let's face it, Vast was about the environment. Whether it was the Manor or the Crystal Caverns. Is that one of the things that you're thinking about for Root as well? Is maybe actually let's take us out of the woods and take us into somewhere else slightly different that has an effect on it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually have 2 prototype maps that I play with in the studio, and I think they'll be part of the expansion Kickstarter in some way. It'd probably just be the premium thing you get if you back the project. Mm-hmm. And so one side of the map is a kind of a mountain pass area.
All right.
And there are tunnels. There are blocked like valleys and tunnels on the map, and then you can pay to clear them and open up additional pathways. Otherwise, the number of pathways is very tight and makes the winter map look roomy. And then the other map is just a giant like lakeside area, and the players building the clearings around the lake. And those are both available on the drive right now.
All right.
You can go download and play those right now. It's probably the sanest thing to do, because the crows and the moles are still pretty alpha. But the maps, it's not that hard to play test.
Yeah.
With those.
Yeah. And as I guess it's another thing, as you bring in more expansions, it's kind of making sure that they kind of interact with each other appropriately.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make the kind of the game kind of broken you.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is it's one of its strengths, because of the simplicity of going for 30 points. If you can think of a new way to score points, then you can have the core of a faction. And as well as, since movement and combat are the same between all the factions, there's a lot of ability. It's really easy to get the factions to play well together, but at the same time, the rule overhead isn't impossible, because if you take a faction out of the game, you just don't have to worry about those rules. Once the alliance is out of the game, you don't need to know what a sympathy stack is, or whatever. Or you don't need to know what a decree is if the birds aren't in play. So at the same time, you keep it kind of light.
Is the Vagabond still your favourite player?
Yeah. Yeah, I like the Vagabond a lot.
Because you got the extra Vagabond as well, so you can have them facing off against each other in the expansion. So you can have two of the little two of the little guys.
Yeah. Or 3, because actually in Riverfolk there's another Vagabond.
Yeah. I'm conscious of time. I'm conscious somebody's rocked up to visit.
You're fine.
In terms of going forward, is it going to be asymmetrical kind of going forward? Do you ever sat down and said, you know what, I just want to make a straight
every day.
game?
Yeah. I'm actually. I think I'm going to take a break from asymmetry because the extreme playtesting overload, which is interesting because a lot of people have been like, "You're the only one carrying that torch. Like you got to keep carrying it."
Yeah.
I think if I go back to work on Path, it will be more variable player power. It may not even be variable player power. And I am working on a dungeon crawler right now, which will be asymmetric in the way this. Like, your character will start to become asymmetric as the story unfolds, but you're going to start out with very similar characters to each other. And I don't know which one's going to win. Basically, I'm bringing them both in for a talent show in January to the staff, and I'm saying, which one of these do you want to work on next?
You can have a public vote.
Yeah. And oh, boy. That's exciting. And it'll be like, Fast 3 will win or something like that.
It could be. It could be like, do we kill Robin, like in Death of the Family?
Nice.
Yeah, well, you know.
And then Cole's studio project right now is still pretty asymmetric.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. What do you? I mean, how do you relax when you're not? Do you relax? Is relax? Is relax something you put on your Christmas list? Relax.
Yeah. It's because I keep getting Kickstarter games in the mail, and I'm like, I just want to play Root. This is neat and all, but I love your other designers, but I just want to play Root. Yeah, it's and it's also funny because I was talking to my business management consultant, and he presented a project to me that I should probably complete this year for business development, and I was like, oh, I thought this would be the year I could work, less than 3,000 hours. And he's like, no, you got one more. You got to do one more year of 3,000 hours. I was like, oh. I won't say it. So, I mean, relaxing is what I do. Relax is I get back to work. But I do play a lot of video games. I try and stay up on what's going on in video games. Also, just like it's fun, and it creates. I think I get to see new concepts, or I get to see some mechanics playing out in real time. If it's a very physical, mechanical game, like, just driving a car or something like that, it also gives my brain a little bit of time to, like, all this kind of percolate.
Yeah, so
I'll come out in 2 or 3 hours and be like, oh, I gotta design this or whatever. So I still do quite a bit of that. I do role play on the weekends. I just got through a 4-year-long 13th Age campaign.
Wow.
On that I was playing on Saturday nights. Now we're casting around, trying to figure out what to do next. But, so I still do that. I have a family, so I'm pretty busy there too.
Yeah. That sounds good. Okay, I got one last question. There's a finger. One last question, okay? Uh-huh. So Santa sends you a message and says, Patrick, you have been an exceptionally good boy. Oh! He says, I'm going to give you a piece of paper. And on that piece of paper, you can write down 3 board games that you would like to own. You can own. And anything you want. It can be first edition, second editions, anything you would like. And I will make sure that on Christmas Day, when you go downstairs in your pajamas, sitting under the tree, wrapped beautifully for you, next to a cookie that's been eaten and a bit of carrot that's been nibbled away, will be these 3 fabulous wrapped parcels with little lovely gift tags on the side saying, just for Patrick. What would you like Santa to bring you this year?
Well, what I'd say to Santa is I want the time to play it.
Well, that's that. You get that.
Okay, good. So let me also preface this with I own a unpunched copy of Magic Realm and Dune.
And your address is...
yeah, please don't rob me. They're not worth that much, are they? So I'm excited to get Zombicide Invader,
right?
Which is still in production, I think. I hope, because I ordered one. I like the Zombicide series as much as I like deep and interesting games. I also just like shutting my brain off and blowing zombies away for a couple hours. As much as I like that. Man, what else? I would like to play. I haven't played Fields of Arle yet. I'd like to play that.
Okay.
It looks really pretty, and I like the I like the just pleasant industrial theme, or the agrarian industrial theme. And I haven't played a UE game in forever. I haven't played a Euro in forever. Nick, what do I want to play badly? Nick, what do I want to play? What do I talk about playing?
You're not allowed to go for help.
I have to go for it. That's a sad little man I am. I think I'd also I would like to try Betrayal Legacy.
Okay.
That looks. I like the Betrayal series quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I'm getting Devil Horns, so I think I made the right choice here.
Ooh.
And so I like Betrayal Legacy. I like Betrayal quite a bit, even though it's like again just kind of all right, some funny things happened and then we died, just like in Zombicide. So I'm interested to see how those pieces fit together. I'm kind of bad. I can write off all my game purchases. So if I do want a game, I just go buy it. Yeah, I mean it's. And I haven't wanted much lately, so I've been kind of slowing down.
Yeah. Are you been slowing down? Kind of picking up on Kickstarter as well?
Yeah, I am slowing down on Kickstarter. I primarily I back a lot of things because like my friends, like I'm friends with John Gilmore now,
yeah.
And so I'll back all the Pandasaurus and stuff. Actually, I don't think I've backed Phobia, but like his Dinosaur Island, I backed because I want him to succeed, and I like Dinosaur Island. And so, like, that's sort of, like, so when I'm in the middle of a campaign, I'll just back like crazy. And since I haven't been in a campaign in a while, I've kind of slowed down my backing. Mm-hmm. And then I showed you in the tour of my studio, we have 2 Calexes near my desk that are just for me. And so, and I already have like 400 games at home. So I think, I could probably slow down. So I just got rid of 40. I managed. And then after I got rid of 40, I felt really liberated. And I was like, I think I could do another 40, but I haven't done it yet. So
So it sounds like you got plenty going on. You got plenty coming up. If people want to keep an eye on you guys and where you exist on the internet webs, where can we find you, sir?
So I would, it's funny because people are like, oh, I'll follow you on Facebook, or I'll go to your website, or I'll go to BGG. BGG is really good. I will post anything I'm working on. As soon as I have 2 ideas rammed together, I'll go to BGG and put it on BGG. So you can follow me on there if you subscribe to me and follow me as a contributor. I also, if I write anything original, I will put on Twitter. Twitter is my main squeeze. I like brevity, and I like, as you can tell by how I talk, I just like the brevity of Twitter, and I like I can just be like, here's a link, come see what I'm working on or whatever. And so I announce everything new on Twitter really quickly. So. Cool. And that's at Leader Games for that, and of course our website's fine. So
awesome. Okay, well, what we'll do is we shall make sure that we put all of the links in the show notes so that we've got notes to share.
Yeah, I'll send those over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much for coming on. I really appreciate your time. It's actually interesting because Root is very, very good fun, and I've got Vast. It's over there. And I
can see it.
You can't. It's behind a cupboard door.
Oh, okay.
But it's kind of waiting. It's kind of waiting to get played. It was intimidating because I opened up the instruction booklet and I went, ah. But now I've watched a couple of playthrough videos and I've been like, I can do this.
It's you, man. It's wonderful.
I can do this. If you want to keep an eye on what we're up to, then go to the internet webs, search in the Googles for We're Not Wizards. You'll find us on Twitter, you'll find us on Facebook, you will find us on Instagram, you will find us on YouTube, you will find us on Tumblr, RIP Tumblr. You will find us on our website, which is we'renotwizards.com. You will find us on our blog, which is we'renotwizards.blogspot.com. You'll find us in all the normal podcast catchers out there, like your Stitchers and Spreakers and Acasts and Podknife, and obviously on Podbean as well, who host our lovely podcast. If you like what you've listened to today, then please consider going to Apple Podcasts and dropping us a subscription. If you like us even more, please give us a rating or a review. If you are going to give us a rating or a review, remember, don't give us 10 stars because it makes us big-headed. But don't give us 1 star because it makes us cry. Give us 5 stars because it's in the middle and it's average. and we're just a little bit average. But the person who's not been average today is the rather wonderful, the rather fantastic. He's the vagabond with the tactics of the hour. He's a leader of men. He's a leader of men and a leader by name. It's Patrick Leader by Lead from Leader Games. Thank you very, very much again for coming on. There's only two more things. Welcome. There's only two more things to do. The first thing is to remember that we are many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, Patrick?
No, definitely not.
Definitely not. Absolutely not. You can't wear it. You can't wear a wand and be making all these lovely things to give to people, to give them cards. And the second thing is to say goodbye. So it's a goodbye from Patrick. Say goodbye, Patrick.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye
Patrick.
From me. Every single time. It's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll sixes, and just, if you've not played Root, get Root. If you've not played Vast, get Vast. I mean, it's not difficult. You know, that's the thing. There's no other special magical message. Remember, stay safe, roll6s.com. But play them, because they're lovely, and they're really, really good fun. But until the next time, goodbye.
Goodbye.